Hey, how's it going, everybody? Let's see. How's everyone doing today? Let's check the audio. Hey, what's up, Alex? How's it going, man? We'll see how many people we get in here today. Hey, what's up, Gabriel? Okay, cool. Let's see. Could I get a mic check from you guys real quick? Just make sure things sound good. I'm doing good, man. I have been really, really, really busy, and have not had any any time at all for anything, which is unusual for me. Oops, what the heck just happened? Why did that disappear? Support, stream health, edit. Ah, we still live? We should still be live, hopefully. Connect stream. Okay, sorry about that, guys. My computer got knocked for a quick sec. Um, but yeah, man, I'm doing good. I have been incredibly busy. Haven't had much time as of late to really do much personal work, which is, rare for me. Haven't had much time to do really anything, unfortunately. I've been pretty busy with work and busy with doing some other class stuff. So, teaching for CGMA, keeping me busy with that and doing some I started as a mentor for Think Tank. So that's taking up a bunch of time now. Actually, I mean, not a bunch of time, but it takes up time during the week. And then I don't know if you saw, but I was helping Jay out with his class and, doing all the feedbacks and stuff on the weekend. That was taking up a good chunk of my free time. In the mornings and at night and stuff. So I haven't really had much flexibility to do things lately. So, but yeah. Hey, how's it going, 3D? So for anyone that's in here that's, wasn't aware, on the Discord, I took a submission for the members. So I know that there's some people in here that are members. So if you do want to submit stuff for feedback or review or whatever to take a look at, I feel like feel free to do that. There should be a link in the that I posted earlier if you are not a part of the Discord. So if you go to posts, right here, there is a Discord link. So if you're not a part of that and you are a member, make sure to join that, and that'll get you access. That should get you access to the secret channel for members and stuff. So that was where we took these submissions from. But yeah, today we were just going to take a look at those. So, as per usual, if you guys have any questions, anything you guys want to talk about, feel free to throw that out there. I know that today is a little bit of a weird one since I'm streaming at night after work. Just kind of happened that, my wife had to leave town and I hadn't had much free time on the weekends. And so we're going to stream tonight. And this is actually going to be the last stream for a couple of weeks, just because this weekend I'm going to Japan for 2 weeks. So I will not be near a computer, unfortunately. But once I get back, hopefully things will have calmed down a little bit more and, life should kind of have steadied out a little bit. So hopefully I can get back into streaming on Sundays like I was there for the first like 5 or 6 weeks of the year. But with that said, as per usual, if you guys have questions, anything you guys want to talk about, feel free to let me know. And we'll just go ahead and, kind of jump right in. The first submission that we had was from Alex. So Alex, I know that you were doing this for Jay's course. and it looks like you hadn't gotten it finished, which is totally cool. But yeah, I can go ahead and provide some general feedback on this guy. So, looking at the concept, I think the main area of feedback. So still have a spot for more people. Yeah, if you have stuff you want to submit, and you are a member, so feel free to submit it over there. If you go into the secret channel, there should be the secret chat. There should be a work in progress thread. Just drop your stuff in there, and I can take a look at that. Obviously, I'm gonna get to everyone else just since they had all submitted first, but we're not super on a time limit for tonight. So I only have 3, so I think you're more than good to throw some more stuff up there. Once you do, just let me know. Just because I can't see the Discord, so let me know in chat, and I'll go and grab that real quick. Okay, cool. So yeah, Alex, could you tell me how far along you are on this? Like where you feel like you're at? Do you feel like you're done with the high poly? Do you want feedback on the high poly? Because I do have just like some general notes that I think we might want to address before we get too far into the low poly. So I'll give you a quick sec to throw that in the chat if you're still here. Joining the Discord. Let me go ahead and share a link real quick. Hopefully that'll give Alex enough time to do 50 uses. Generate new link, copy. Okay, I'm going to put this in the description. There is a link in the, oh my gosh, why does it always do that? Okay, so there should be a link in the description. Try and join that and see if that gives you access. Because for whatever reason, I don't know why, but it always generates like a copy hidden link sort of thing. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so in terms of feedback, so Alex said, so have the face high poly, low poly is in progress, but the jacket is placeholder open for general feedback. Okay, so one of the main things standing out to me, in my opinion, is I feel like a lot of the hard surface elements in particular feel very, very thin. So like looking at like these guys, all of this stuff feels like it's almost to the point of being thin enough where it feels very flimsy. It doesn't feel very sturdy, which like in here we can see there is a little bit of a lip, but it feels like there's a little bit more of a lip and width to the pieces that we have on the character. So that's the first thing that I would call out, is just the overall like thickness and sturdiness of a lot of this stuff on the character does feel a little bit dainty. Especially like in here as well on the internal pieces. Like you can see these pistons, they all feel very, very tiny and thin. Whereas if we come here, like this red is not the best color to use, I guess. Let's do this instead. So you can see like the thickness on this guy is a little bit more defined. And you can see that when we come here and look at a lot of the internals and stuff like that, like we want to make sure that there is a silhouette in there of the structure. Whereas right now I feel like we have a ton of negative space. Like look at how big all of this negative space is in here. So because of that, we're just seeing directly to the back. It doesn't really feel like there's too many internals or like a cohesive bunch of pieces that really kind of house and hold this guy together. It just feels like there's pieces missing, and it feels like we could probably like flesh that out a little bit more and make him feel a little bit bulkier on that internal side. Same thing with like the chest piece as well. From right here, it's kind of hard to tell, but this feels very, very thin. for the sake of just embellishment, I would add a little bit more thickness to it. Just because, again, you want it to feel sturdy. You don't want this guy to feel like, I could walk up and punch his chest and I'm going to leave a dent in it. But based on how small the elements and thin those metal pieces are feeling currently, that's kind of how they're feeling. So that's the first thing that I would call out is just like the internal elements all are feeling pretty thin and flimsy. Even like these pistons and stuff in the arm, still pretty thin. I would thicken those up, a little bit more so that they read a little bit better. Let's see. So you said low poly jacket is placeholder. Okay. In terms of silhouette, I would try and get a little bit more of like this kind of sharp plane change in here on the shoulders. Right now it's feeling very just kind of flat overall. Like it's just a very soft curve. There's not really much change to it. And so once we put this guy's shoulders down, we're just going to end up with like a shape kind of like this. Whereas what we probably want to have happen is we really want to kind of define that shoulder a little bit more. We want to kind of have that plane up here so that we get a little bit of a nicer read once we bring the arms down. And you can even see that here in the concept, just that like sharp plane, this flare out, and we capture this read right here. Same thing with over here. There's this kind of inverse curve, and you can see that just the readability of that becomes a lot more interesting and sharp and angular. And so same thing with right here is I might even embellish it a little bit, bring it out just a touch so that we are creating that clearance over here on the sides. Obviously once you bring the arms down, you might sorry, let me rephrase this. If you are planning on bringing the arms down and just leaving this jacket as is, that's fine. But I still would come up here and get that initial kind of plane change that I was talking about. I think that the pants are feeling pretty good. I do think it's hard to tell from right here, but it feels like they're falling like this, which I'm assuming that they are. But since I don't have like a 3/4 angle, it feels a little bit odd. So I would want it to kind of like be hiked up in the back so that we could see that. And we're kind of getting more of a shape like this. So there's probably something that's kind of holding it up more up here. Same thing as if you were to look at a real person when their pants sag in the front, you kind of get that like falling off of the front hip as because you have your butt in the back, that if we have a butt here, that's kind of holding it up. You know what I mean? So that's just another small thing. I do like the wrinkling and stuff that we have on here. I feel like this is some good flow and tension that we have going on here. The only thing that I would recommend with these pants is all of the wrinkles are all feeling very samey, and none of them have any kind of like sharp, drastic plane change. So when I would get down here, I would get like my damn standard brush or something and set it to a really, really low intensity. And then I would just kind of come in here and define some of these planes a little bit more, so that we have some sharpness, just like little bits of sharpness in here, so that we're breaking up and adding a little bit more of that contrast to what the material is, and that we don't have just all of these same lines that all feel the same kind of pressure and opacity, but it adds a little bit more variation to it. Let's see. So this gun holster, I will say from this perspective, it does feel unfinished. It kind of just feels like a rounded shape. So if you aren't done with that, I would make sure to like come in here, maybe add like the little lip of the two, like where the leather meets. So if we look at it from the top half, you have kind of something like this, and then it's being sewn right here. And then you would add kind of like that seam line right there. And then I would just get some like break up to the surface with like a low intensity brush to add a little bit of noise and variation to kind of how the surface is being broken up. Let's see. Let's take a look at the hands. So the hands are hard to make out from right here. I would say that we might be getting a little like too sharp and thin on the fingers. I might like to see a little bit more of like thickness to the silhouette of them so that they read from the distance a little bit better. Um, in terms of the low poly, um, let's see. Some of it's kind of hard to make out, but I think for the most part, things are looking fine. The pants look fine. This rope, I so you can see right here, we're getting like that faceting happening. I might give another span in here just so that we can smooth that out just a little bit more. On round shapes, whether it's like something like this, which this I think feels fine, or something like a rope, you want to make sure to have enough spans in there so that the shape reads from this distance, and you're not starting to see some of that like breakdown happening. Stuff like this, that's probably more than enough in terms of topology, but something like this is obviously a lot bigger and a lot closer to this size and scale from how we're viewing it now. But this compared to this, we're already losing some of that detail. Um, so another thing too, in terms of the chest, one thing that I like about this concept, which I feel like we're missing on here, is I like all the like edge details and things like that. So I would come in and like sculpt this stuff onto the plates, get that on there, but also this sort of like chest area. I don't know how you're reading it, but if you are reading it as like a flat across surface like that, I probably wouldn't do that, just because of the fact that it starts to feel boring. So what I would do is I would add a little bit of a lip to it so that that detail comes up outwards a little bit. It doesn't have to necessarily be like too steep like that, but just some indication of kind of a plane break right here where the form starts to change. And so that's going to add a little bit more interest and light play to how the light is happening on the model. Whereas like right now, I think since it's all kind of flush with each other, it feels a little bit flat. And I think we could just make that a little bit more interesting. Um, so on the jacket, I think that there's some areas that we could probably reinforce some of the wrinkles, so like through these areas, we could just reinforce them a little bit more so that they're a little bit more prominent. Right now, it feels like the surface is a little bit too flat and a little bit too clean. So I would just try and reinforce some of those wrinkles a little bit more. For the chest, I added convexness to the red part as you see. Okay. Yeah, convexness is cool. Which I would even go as far as having uh convex here and then concave there a little bit. So then, again, you're just getting more like light play as the light is hitting things, and you're just getting more of an interesting read for how the model and the shapes are formed. Let's see. Now, in terms of the face, I don't have a ton that I can kind of go off on here. But I think for the most part, it's headed in a good direction. I think what I would start to do, like to define things a little bit further, is I might just go in with like a standard brush and just kind of like, reinforce some of the stretchy bits with like a tight edge, like some of this stuff right here. Don't draw in right here, but like some of this stuff, just really make sure that it feels kind of like tight and stringy, reinforcing that kind of melted feel. And then like the rest of it, you could have like some of these like small forms that you have in here, but I would leave it a little bit cleaner just really defining kind of the volumes and the forms and things like that. Yeah, you can see like there's a lot of this like natural flow through here, which is cool. So yeah, I would just focus on doing that a little bit more. Again, that's just based on what I'm seeing here. And then another thing, this is probably like the last two things that I would say is I would, the bottom, or sorry, side note, bottom half I think is looking good. I'm pretty comfortable with that aside from just getting some of those sharp wrinkles in there. I do think the top half is where we need a little bit more kind of like push on things. But one other thing that I did want to call out is this knife and this. So if you look right now from this front perspective, one thing that you'll see is the knife is pretty much perpendicular. So I would get a little bit more of a curve on it, and I might even like have it a little bit closer right here so that it reads a little bit better, and it's not going to be under the jacket depending on how, oh, never mind. I can see it right here. But yeah, point still stands is I would get a little bit more of a tilt to it. So it's not just perfectly up and down, because what's happening is I'm going to delete this layer and I'm going to do another one, is we have this inner line right here. And if we just draw straight down, you can see that there's no silhouette breakup that's happening. So we want to have something that kind of sticks out from that straight line that our eye naturally is drawing, you know? And then with this guy, the main thing that I would say is right now, it's just right in the dead center of the character. So if we drew through like the center line, I apologize for my crude drawing, guys. I'm using my Intuos tablet right now. So you can see that it's literally directly in the middle and split almost exactly in half. So that just becomes a little bit boring. It feels less exciting. It feels less nuanced. So I would push it this way a little bit, just so that there's a little bit more unbalance to it. And then I might also like even round it around here just a little bit so that we are getting kind of like more of a silhouette to it depending on how we see it, you know? So that's kind of the main notes. I know I threw a lot at you, but, you know, just trying to call out the things that I see that I think we could still kind of push a little bit further. And I don't think we're too far along where some of this stuff is, we can't, you know, push this stuff a little bit further. So hopefully that helps, Alex. If you have any other questions about it, you know, please feel free to let me know. All right, let's take a look at our next one. Okay, so we've taken a look at this one before. I do have some notes on it, but first, before we, let's see, before we do the render, let's take a look at just like the substance file, and I can kind of call things out on this guy. But first, before I do that, I'm going to take a drink of water so that I don't end up getting a raspy, hoarse voice before we're done. Okay. Couldn't see what you were pushing where, but thanks a bunch here. I'm not sure. So sorry. Hard to see lines on the last point of what you would do. I guess that's a good point. I should probably make my brush a little bit bigger. So I apologize. Let's see. Did I get rid of it? Yeah. So I was just kind of talking about this area, I think. So moving the gun that way and then kind of wrapping it a little bit more on the surface so that it's not lying on this like front plane quite as much. Hopefully that clears it up. If not, we can chat more about it. Okay, so let's go back into here. So this is our concept. Okay, cool. Okay, so I think the first thing that I would call out is the skin. I like what we're doing. I like that there is kind of an attempt to capture some of this like painterly feel. I do think that there's a couple of areas where we are missing it. And I think a lot of it comes from like this sort of stuff that we're seeing here. And we don't have a lot of reinforcement of the like reason behind some of those colors. It feels kind of just like maybe bruising or something like that, but it doesn't really feel like it's there for a specific reason. So that's the first thing that I would call out in terms of the skin is I do think that we could probably clean this stuff up. But one thing that I'm also noticing with this area that I would probably go back and maybe tweak a little bit is if we look here at the concept, we can see there's a very defined sort of sculptural feel to what's going on in the arm. We have a lot of the muscles that are being broken up right here. We have some of the tendons that are visible through the hand. So like if you look at your hand, depending on how like skinny your hand is or how bulky it is, you can see some of those tendons when you start to grab something. So I think from a sculptural level, I would probably try and go back and reinforce and do a secondary pass on the arm, just so that we can get some of those sculptural elements back into the form. Because right now we are kind of losing it. We don't really have much on there, and it does feel a little bit flat. So I think we could give that another pass. Same thing with this arm. The detail I think looks cool. I do think that the hands look cool, or the fingers, I think that those look fine. I just would want to kind of come in and bring a pass to sharpen some of this information up a little bit more. The other thing that was standing out to me in regards to the texturing is the color choices. We did vary a little bit in terms of the color choices that we are going for. So we have kind of this brown upper garb, and then we have purple on this lower garb. Right now, I think the big problem with that choice is, well, actually, I mean, it's not even really a big problem, but it does just introduce kind of a competing color tone to what we have in the skin. So if we look at the character from back here, the main things that you can see in the concept is you can see like the white of the face, the white of the ear, the white of the arms, the white of the tail, and the white of the other arm. And that's all contrasted as a secondary or like a tertiary shape to the rest of the silhouette. Right now, if we zoom back, we do have that still, but we aren't creating quite as much separation because of the colors that we have. We do have good separation in there, but I might just make that a little bit of a neutral color. So bringing it back into kind of like a dark brown potentially. So let's see. Let's see if I can do this real quick. So we'll do a color layer. So we'll select that. So if we just kind of bring that down as a darker color, something like this, which actually before I do that, let's color pick this value and see what the value is. Okay, so the value's in a good range. I do just think we probably could pull some of that like purple out of it. Maybe to like right here. Maybe a little bit more in the brown, I think. Brown red. Something like that. Yeah, so it's really subtle, but I might just pull out some of that like purple that we're getting just a little bit. And then maybe even just darken it just a touch. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the main thing, is just kind of pulling a little bit more cohesiveness to the colors. So you can see like the pants, that is kind of one color block. The pants in this like tunic sort of thing, that's one color block. The shoes is a color block, and then the like face and skin is a color block. The armor is a little bit of a color block, but I think we're not getting quite as much separation on that area. But aside from that, I think things are looking good. We do have a lot of like light information, it looks like, potentially baked into this guy, which I would not recommend, just because we might run into issues in our PBR and braking and things like that. So let's see, is this the right one? Give that a second to think. Okay, so that was the one we were looking for. So then let's step through some of these layers real quick. I do like that. That looks good. Going in here and kind of painting these graphic shapes, that looks really good. I like that. Okay. So this layer, I'm guessing this is what's partly doing it. I wouldn't bake this stuff into your textures. Just because this is what the renderer is going to do. So this is just like superficially darkening things. So I probably wouldn't do that, just because you're going to start breaking the PBR a little bit. So let's see what this looks like. Yeah, that looks pretty good. A little bit of a cleaner read, I think, as well. We might be able to go in and like clean up some of the color and surface on here as well, just to, have like areas that aren't covered in rust and things like that, like maybe on top of these shoulders, so that we can get more of this like cleaner highlight on some areas. I think that that would be good. Let's see what our roughness looks like. Yeah, so I would come through on the roughness and just try and clean up some of these surfaces so that we're not just getting like erratic noise throughout. I think that that'll give a little bit of a nicer read to the metal. And it doesn't have to be the entire piece, but just like coming through some of these big broad surfaces and just kind of more so mitigating the rust and the dirt to areas that are a little bit more recessed and kind of grungy. But I like the metal. I think it looks pretty cool. The other thing, like this sword, I think right now we're doing more than we probably need to. I think we could probably reduce the rust overall just to clean things up a little bit. And I think that you could probably do that same sort of pass on the character throughout. I know that this character is like meant to feel like a rat, so they're probably going to be really, really dirty, but I think we could come through and kind of just reduce some of the overall like staining and just sort of this spray effect that we have throughout. I think just kind of cleaning up the materials just a little bit might help out a touch. And now for the leather, I think that the leather looks pretty successful. The only thing that I would say, what the heck is going on? Why is my See, this is why you don't use a Wacom tablet when you guys aren't used to it, because then you end up like me, and now my thing is off on the other screen, and it's not supposed to be. So let me try and fix this real quick. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Screen area, monitor 1. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it had my thing going off on the other monitor. Didn't make any sense, guys. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I think that the leather looks good. I think the leather is your most successful material. The only thing that I would recommend is if you look at all of the edges, they all have the same level of edge wear throughout. So I would come in here and just add a little bit more variation and irregularity to it. So let's find our leather. Boots, bandages, straps. So let's see. Okay, so this guy, so I would just come in here, which I know I put that in probably the wrong area. But like you did with the like this sort of graphic shapes, which this was sculpted in, so that was intentionally put there. I would do the same thing with this stuff is I would come through and just add it a little bit more intentionally and break up some of these continual lines. So something like this. So getting like an irregular shape in here, which this doesn't look great. So you'd have to like come in and correct some of this, but breaking up some of these straight lines that feel really perfect. Adding a little bit more graphic read to some of the areas. Like that. And so now you can see that feels a lot more interesting than just a straight line that is encapsulating every edge of the leather. So that's the main thing that I would call out in terms of the texturing. Let's see. Yeah, I would clean this metal up as well. There's a little bit of a baking artifact right there. It's not a huge deal, but just something I'd call out. That is probably coming from probably your low poly might not have enough. It might just be coming in from your bake settings. So I would check that. Again, it's not a huge deal, but just something that I noticed. And if I notice it, then other people might notice it. So you just want to make sure to try and clean those things up the best that we can. Sometimes they happen, but just figured I'd call it out. The boots look cool. I like the boots. The only feedback that I'd have for the boots is I would get a little bit more of like the exposed tearing like that we're seeing up here onto them, like on this tip. And then other than that, I think they look good. I think they feel pretty cool. Now in terms of the renders, so I think overall the renders are looking pretty cool. I think the main thing of feedback is so if you kind of go back to what I had said earlier about the contrast and what's reading, I think right now one of the things that's really successful about the concept is this light background. So what this light background is doing is it's really doing a good job of helping to sell this silhouette. On ours currently with this black background, there's a lot of stuff that's falling into shadow. So a lot of stuff is kind of in a similar sort of value range. So if we open this up and we kind of just sample across some of this stuff, you can see that the difference between these two color values isn't very huge. We do have a little bit of a rim light, but you can see that that rim light isn't even that hot to really add too much separation in this area. It's adding a little bit, but not as much as we would hope. So what I would recommend doing is if you do want to keep this black background is I would just make sure to come through and add maybe a couple more lights here and there. So that we can start to separate some more of these areas. So like through here, on top of the nose, really just kind of selling the silhouette on this guy just a little bit more. You don't have to do too much, but we just want to make sure that all this stuff isn't like fading into the background quite as much. So same thing with like down in here, we could get some of that light spilling onto the tunic so that that's separating from down here. We could also do right here. Same thing with down here. Just get a little bit of that like light to add on this. And so you can see that just by that like little bit of light, we're creating a lot more separation to the character. And I would also try and get a little bit back here as well. So now we have like a readable silhouette that is, popping off of the background from that dark background. Or if you don't want to do that at all because of the values of the character, so the armor and the pants and the shoes all being a lot darker, you could go for more of this like dark to middle gray color. And I think that that would help to add that separation. So you can see even if we just draw and kind of outline this character, there's a lot more readability there because of that value choice. Seems like I went a bit far with the dirt. Yeah, I mean, it happens. I don't blame you. You know, for this kind of character, I probably would do the same thing. I just think that sometimes we have to kind of reel it back a little bit because less can be more in certain situations. And if we add too much dirt, things can become a little bit muddy, and it can just kind of get a little bit too visually noisy, and it can become kind of distracting. But now that I'm actually looking at this character in the render, one thing that I would call out that I actually am liking in the concept is the value difference between the boots and the rest of the clothes. So you can see there is a little bit more of this separation here with the value that we have on the boots. It's not a ton, but I might just add a little bit of a brighter value on yours. Um, I mean, the lightning does help, but you might be able to add a little bit more to create some more separation down through the ankle region and stuff. So, not a huge thing that I would call out, but it is something that we might be able to add a little bit of saturation and brightness to it. I think might be interesting. Um, let's see. I do like the eye. I think that that looks cool. Um, yeah. Yeah. So back to the forearm and stuff, I would probably remove this stuff. I would go back to the sculpt and just do like a quick sculpting pass to really kind of capture the like tendons and things like that, and try and reinforce some of the forms. I'm gonna try and like paint a little bit on this. I'm not an actual painter, so this probably isn't gonna look very good, but we'll see if we can kind of fake some of that. So just getting some of that like tendon form highlighted a little bit more. Some of that cavity of like where the elbow dips down in and touches the elbow bone. I don't know what the bone is actually called, but yeah, so you can see just like really subtle changes that I think would help kind of push things a little bit further. But yeah, that's kind of the main feedback with this guy. I think it came together pretty well. It's just like I said, a couple of small changes. Same thing, or sorry, last thing. I know I did mention this already, but cleaning up some of these surfaces, I do think will also help to like push a little bit more pop to some of these metals. So like just coming through and trying to get some more of these highlights a little bit hotter. Not too hot, but that might help as well. Just some of that stuff. Um, yeah. And then actually one other thing too is if you don't already, I'm pretty sure you're using Marmoset. Uh I can't really tell if you have any fuzz going on the pants or any of the fabrics. That might also help with getting some of that like Fresnel effect to help things pop a little bit more and separate them from the background. So, yeah, let's see. There's our quick little paint over, you know, subtle but quick. Let's exit out of this and then let's move on to our next one, which this is from 3D Maniac. I'm going to close this guy out. Let's see. Okay, Gabriel uploaded some stuff. Cool. Uh, okay, cool. Okay, so with this guy, I do have a little bit of feedback. Primarily, the feedback that I have is going to have to do with just some of the anatomy and some of the sculpting on it. I think that there's a lot of cool stuff on here, but I do think that there's some stuff that we can push a little bit further. So the first area that really stands out to me is going to be this forearm area. So if we select this guy, we have kind of this dip right here, which obviously over here you're like you have the teeth and the tongue coming out, but over here this forearm doesn't really make too much sense, and the reason for that is because you have a bone right here that comes across, and then you have a bone right here that comes down, which it looks like you have, but then these muscles are like diving up into here, and then you have these muscles here that are wrapping around the forearm, which are correct, but it kind of feels like these muscles are reaching up into here and they're like contracting and pulling the arm up and down. So it's not actually anatomically correct. So it does look a little bit weird when you see it from this perspective because you just see this line and you see it countered by this line. So how we would fix that is we would fill this in like this. So by filling that in a little bit more, we're going to have all of these muscles that attach up here to this bone on the elbow. And then all of this comes down into the forearm. So we can still have that like big piece of separation, but we're just filling in this area so that we have all of the muscles on the bottom side here. So now you can see that we're getting this like straight and then we're getting a curve. So curve, curve, straight, straight, curve, which is what we want. Now, in terms of some of the rest of the anatomy, we do have some areas too that are a little bit wonky. Like back here, this tendon, this, I can see where we're going with this, but right now it's like attaching back here, where in reality, again, we just want to kind of narrow this up because this is going to like kind of come more along the lines of this. So it's not going to be quite as straight, kind of straight line. So we can kind of just bring that up in here, straighten that out a little bit more. And then let's do a selection lasso. Oops. Get some of these forms. So you can see one thing that I'm seeing is like when I turn right here, you can see that it's all just very, very straight. So we just want to get a little bit more of that like structure to the legs, some of that counter structure. So like you have a muscle here, which you are capturing, but then you also have muscles that are running along here, but they're kind of offset. So you get this like diagonal line as opposed to just a straight line across. So get some of that. Pull some of this forward a little bit. Like that. And then this knee does feel a little bit odd. So we just like kind of have like bones protruding, and then we have like big muscles over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sculpt this stuff down a little bit. So scoop that, bring this down here. Like that. Fill some of that in. So now we want to kind of bring this front plane more forward because everything's like falling on this same plane right here. So we'll bring this forward a little bit, bring that in just a touch. So this is going to be that calf muscle. Knock some of this shape back. And these two lines, they feel very parallel. So what we're going to want to do is just kind of add a little bit of this curve here. So straight curve. So that I think will help. We'll also kind of thicken this area up just a little bit. Okay, so let's duplicate this real fast and we'll just do like an A-B to see if I'm making things worse or if I'm actually helping because, sculpting takes a long time, so sometimes it doesn't actually make much of a difference off of a few strokes, but hopefully a little bit. So getting a little bit more thickness into those legs to feel a little bit meatier, reworking some of that anatomy. Yeah, there's still areas that I would need to rework, but I feel like getting some of that volume up there as well definitely helps things out. Now, in terms of the back, same thing. I think some of these areas are kind of jettisoning out a little bit too much. So like these guys, they all feel like they're all kind of that same level of bulbousness. So you can see they all have that same sort of roundness. So let's see. So if I can remember, so we'll kind of knock some of this back a little bit. So the arms are up pretty high. So what we want is we want this to kind of be tucking under um, the deltoids. And then we should, because the anatomy is a little bit different, I'm kind of having a hard time figuring this stuff out. So I would probably bring these a little bit wider. Bring this out a little bit. So then we're getting kind of like more of that like build back there, whereas like before, all of this stuff was kind of like falling, like it's pinching here, whereas we want it a little bit wider out. So, oops. I swear this Intuos tablet just decides to do whatever it wants. Let's see. Let me look at my reference. So like that. Yeah, the form that we have here is good. Might also be able to get like some of that like thin band of the lats kind of pulling this shape in. Yeah, so it's not great, but you can kind of see where I'm headed with it, pulling some of that stuff out. Now, one thing I did want to call out on this guy that I think is just kind of another opportunity that we can do to improve the silhouette is I like the spikes that we have, but this eye, we're if we look at it from the profile, we're completely losing it. So I think that that's something that we probably would want to kind of get some of this like protruding out. It doesn't have to be like quite as like dramatic as I made it, but would be a cool opportunity to add something here. So, like as it moves around, which you'd have to find like the right pivot point and stuff. But it would feel a little bit more interesting if it was able to kind of like swivel and swoosh around and you're actually like seeing it move. Whereas with it like pushed so far back, it just kind of falls flush with the rest of the face. And, it's, I don't know, a little bit less creepy, um, in my opinion. But what do I know? I don't know. Now, in terms of some of the other like sculpting and stuff, something that I do think we could potentially improve on is if we look at like a lot of the forms, they all kind of have a sort of same quality. So, like through here, we can just see that like this into this into this, they all feel the same kind of depth. So what I would do is I would just come here with like a low intensity and just make sure to really like find those points of separation between the forms so that they don't all kind of fall together like what we're seeing currently. So really kind of come in here and define those forms a little bit more. Like that. Same thing with like up in here. So now you can see from like right here, everything feels very like same level of smoothness, but now once we do that, you can see this is starting to read better. This shape right here is different from this shape, and then this shape is different from those other two shapes. So I would try and, get more of that. Um, Same thing with like the abs and stuff. Like if we look, they all kind of have the same sort of like level of intensity. So I would just make sure to like kind of come through, break up some of these forms a little bit. Like that. So very subtle, very quick, but it just adds a little bit more intensity. Come in here, adds like kind of a deep dive right there. Same thing with these like pecs. I like that they're diving into the right spot, but we probably want to get a little bit more of like an indication right here where they're diving in. Oops. Yeah. Then you'd have to just kind of come in and pull some of this stuff forward a little bit. And then now the last thing that I'll suggest for this guy. Sorry guys, I keep like hitting every single button possible on this thing. And I don't know what I keep hitting, but I keep hitting stuff. But is we have all of these scales, and that's totally fine. But one of the things that if we look at all of them, they all are the same thickness. They all are like the same kind of pillowy fill. So what I would recommend doing is when doing things like scales, I normally will come through and draw one and draw two and draw three, whatever. But then I will come through, kind of sculpt it out, and then I just like come through and try and accent some of the edges, find edges that feel a little bit more interesting. And so you can see, even just with like those couple of strokes, we have a surface that feels a little bit more nuanced than what we currently have. Whereas everything just kind of feels like we masked it and then um, we pulled it off of the surface. So like this, or however we decided to do it. So inflate it like that. And then maybe we went around the edges and then that's where we left it. So everything kind of has that same sort of like pillowy shape in the scales and the details. I like the like patterning that we have. I feel like there's a lot of variety in it, but everything just, like I said, kind of has that same sort of pillowy feel to it. So I would come through here and just like kind of sculpt on top of some of these, maybe figure out a directionality which the scales will kind of lay. So maybe they like kind of have a higher point down here. So giving some of this, and then just adding some of these like undercuts to it, and then maybe even softening out that top edge. So something like that, just making them feel a little bit more interesting and finished up. So yeah, just a subtle thing. Um, but yeah. Uh I followed reference of a feline hind leg, hence it looks. Oh yeah, I understand that. Which I mean, you can get away with some of those things. I think you just have to be careful and picky and choosy. I think for this type of leg, I don't know if it necessarily works quite as well. Just because it is so like straight, and those that type of like leg structure I think is probably more for like something that is meant to be on all fours and running, to like kind of help that like spring sort of effect. But when you have something that's standing up, I don't think it works quite as well. So, but yeah, that's kind of the overall feedback. Awesome. That's a lot of amazing feedback so far. Yeah, of course, man. I'm happy to help. Like I said, just a lot of anatomy things and like small things that hopefully you can take for, the future and just kind of apply to the rest of your work, which that's usually the case with like any of these. If people are like, oh, I don't really care about your feedback and don't want to apply it for this, that's totally fine. But just things to note for the future. Let's see, is there a way to prevent surfaces from merging with each other during Dynamesh or Z remeshing? During Z remeshing, surfaces shouldn't merge with each other. During Dynamesh, I would recommend, depends what it is. If it's like hands, I would splay the fingers out. But yeah, I mean, I usually don't get to a point where I have to like worry about that, like merging stuff together because of Dynamesh. So yeah, it just kind of depends. Surfaces close to each other. Yeah. So like I said, if they're too close to each other, it depends what it is. And uh yeah, kind of just depends. You can increase the resolution and that might help it. But yeah, you just kind of have to mess with it till you can get a result that doesn't Dynamesh together. Why is the Discord link not valid? I don't know. I can't seem to ever get Discord to work properly. So what you want to do is, let's see. I think that this one has a link that works. So try this one. I think that one has a Discord link in there that works. Okay, so let's close this guy. Then we're going to take a look at our next one. Augustus Col Train, the man, the myth, the legend. Gears of War was my favorite game as a kid. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I think was when that game came out. And where I'm from, it doesn't usually snow a ton. But occasionally when it does, it can snow a lot. And where I'm from is not usually very prepared for snow. And I was sorry guys, hold on one sec. Hey, stop it. Sit down. Stop. So I was in 7th grade. It was winter break. It snowed, and I ended up being at home or not by myself. My parents were sick, and I was by myself playing Gears of War for like 4 days straight while it was like a blizzard outside and my parents were sick and they didn't know anything. They woke up and they were like, "What happened?" And I was like, "It's been snowing for like 3 days, but you guys have been like, passed out in the room sick." So, um, but yeah, by the way, the Painterly Pokemon videos were amazing. Any plans on more Painterly style walkthroughs and Southern Painter, especially the ones that's more technical instead of artistic direction? So I do have a video that I'm working on, and it's not actually going to talk about hand painting at all. There's going to be a video. It's going to be that Moodang piece that I did, and that'll just be kind of like cut footage in the background. I'm going to be talking about the interview process and like kind of going through the interview process and getting your first job kind of thing. So no, I don't have any plans for that currently, just because I'm not really much of a hand painter. I've kind of just taught myself by watching videos and things like that, and I don't really have much formal training, so I don't know if I'm the best person to kind of like teach on that subject. So I probably won't do that. And also, I did 3 Pokemon videos, those hand painted ones, and 2 of them did okay. One of them did really good. 2 of them didn't do. One of them did okay, and then one of them just did really bad. I think it's like the worst video that I have on my channel. But yeah. So I don't know. Probably not. I have other stuff that I need to do first. So maybe if I get back to doing the Pokemon, I might. But I don't have any plans for it right now. It's not valid too. Okay, I don't know how I'm gonna. Let me see if I can get. Let's see. Invite people. Hidden. Use copy button. Why? Why is it hidden? I don't understand that. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm not gonna be able to send out a link for it. I'll have to post it on my. I'll post it on. Actually, you know what? No, yeah, I'll post it on the um I'll post it on my posts after this. Um this one's for members, so I'm not going to send out this one. But I'll post one after this. I don't know why it won't let me copy and paste it on there, so I'll do that afterwards. That style is exactly the look I'm going for in my models, but I can't figure out the steps you took to get there technically. There wasn't really any steps technically. I just painted it. That's pretty much the gist of it. I didn't like there wasn't really like a process that I had for it. It was just paint something and make it look cool. So okay, cool. Let's take a look at Col Train. So right off the bat, this looks sweet. Let's see, was there any notes in here? Work in progress would be cool to share your thoughts. This is early look development. Okay, cool. So I can say right off the bat, looks like Gears of War, feels like Gears of War. So I think you did a really good job with that. The armor looks really cool. Let's see. Let's open up one of the Gears of War characters real quick. Was there a concept for this one by chance? Let's look at these guys. Nope, that's just Marcus's head. This one will be a good one. Okay, so this guy. Okay. So I don't have a ton of feedback that I would say in terms of the modeling. I think the only thing that's really kind of standing out to me is just a couple of things. One, we'll talk about this like side profile silhouette. I like what we have going on up here. Let's see. But this sort of like curve feel like it feels a little bit odd. So I would try and like get maybe a little bit more of an angle to it, or just something that isn't quite as like kind of flat and subtle poochy feeling. Um but aside from that, I think it looks good. I do think we could probably create a little bit more of separation back here between this back plate that we have. I like what we have here in terms of this separation. I just think that we need to like gets a little bit of a different line, or not just like a straight line from this side profile. The sculpting all looks really good. One thing that is kind of standing out to me is this line. I feel like for the most part it feels a little bit like straight. So I'm not sure if there's anything that we can do to like break that up. I like that we have this sort of like nudge down here, but like maybe we can get a shape like this instead, so that we don't just have this like kind of straight line that feels very flat. So you can see here, this shape is like more conforming to the rib cage, which is nice. So I would try and do something along the lines of that, just so that we're not getting just like this kind of almost perfectly straight line across. This piece, I'm having a hard time deciphering like what exactly this is supposed to be. It does just kind of feel like it feels kind of reminiscent of abs, which is cool, but like, is it supposed to be a part of the shirt? Or is it supposed to like be extra padding? Because like this stuff back here makes me think that it's like extra padding, but I don't know, kind of not sure how to feel about it exactly. And then also on the subject of this backside, I'm not a huge fan of like this circle shape. I think what I would do is I would take this area and I probably would remove it, so that instead we're just getting kind of like this natural sort of like arrow that you would expect along the backside. And I think that that would kind of mimic more of what this is doing. So if you want to, if you're cool with what's on the front here, I think that that's totally fine. But I would maybe reinforce the backside to kind of follow that look and feel as though it's kind of following suit with anatomy, if that makes sense. My first inclination is this area feels like it's missing something. So like maybe a vent or something like that, I think would be cool to have there. It does just feel a little bit like broad and like a big open surface, which is, it's fine to have clean open surfaces, but I think that that one to me is kind of screaming for something to be there. Convey Gears of War, but more realistic than usual, and it's not a concept. I just copied the design. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that you're hitting that. I think that this feels very realistic. It feels a lot more believable than like the over the top like hyper blockhead macho Gears of War designs. I feel like this feels a lot more like along the lines of someone that I've seen. So I think that that's cool. I like the silhouette break that we have here. I think this is good. We might be able to push this out a little bit further, these pouches, because right now it's kind of falling in line with this side. So we kind of are losing that interest that it's adding. We're only just getting this little bit. So I might move it over just a touch, or largen it up so that we get some more of that break off of the side. The gloves are interesting. Part of me wants to like, I don't know, have a little bit more silhouette break, but like based on what we're seeing here, we're not really getting that in the concept. You might be able to like add like some kind of like knuckle sort of thing in here to add some visual interest to to the hands, but that's not a huge thing. And then the other thing that I might recommend is like maybe just getting something on one of these arms, whether it's like a wrap or something like that, to add a little bit of asymmetry. Because we do have a lot of asymmetry in this, or a lot of symmetry in this character. Like the whole suit is pretty much symmetrical. The shirt is symmetrical. The pants not exactly symmetrical, but I think it just might be another opportunity to add a little bit. Yeah. I already have it detailed. It's near board on the right. Oh, oh, yes, you do. Okay, good for you, dude. Yeah, this looks sweet. I like this. I think that looks really cool. Um, I like the layer of details that we have. This stuff looks cool. It's not too much. These look cool. Yeah, I take it back. What do I know, dude? This looks sweet. Um, yeah, overall, I think that that's really the only feedback that I have. Like I said, this is a really solid model. Looks really good. I'm just kind of like nitpicking more than anything. In terms of the head, I would say that I like this expression. I like the like kind of furrowed brow. I think it adds a lot of character to him. This facial expression and even this one feels a little bit like, oh, I just had a sad day. It doesn't feel quite as much like I would expect like a Gears of War character's expression to be. So I might just try and introduce a little bit of that like downslope to the eyebrows, that eyebrow kind of crinkling a little bit more. Obviously, if you're gonna like animate this or something, the more neutral pose is probably fine and makes more sense. But if you're not planning on like doing any animation or anything like that, then I would probably just recommend doing somewhat of an expression in the model. So, but yeah, aside from that, the shading looks really cool. The skin looks good. Textures look good. I don't really have much to throw out there. I think keep chugging on. It's a really solid model. Looks really sweet. I'm definitely stoked to see the finished piece because this is awesome. I think you're killing it. So keep it up. But with that said, that kind of brings us to the end of our of these this work in progress review. I don't really have much else to talk about, unfortunately. I do got to go do some reviews for CGMA and stuff like that. So I'm going to just wrap things up here. Thank you guys for submitting your stuff. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. Hopefully, even if you didn't submit stuff, you're able to get something out of this. I'm not sure when my next stream is going to be. Like I said at the beginning, I'm going to be leaving town to Japan for the next 2 weekends. So I'm not going to stream for at least 2 more weeks. And then hopefully once I get back, I will kind of kick up the Sunday streams and we'll be doing those again once a week. And, I haven't worked any more on the Turtle Dragon thing. So we're going to keep picking up on that guy. So yeah, keep up the great work, everyone. I appreciate you guys all spending a Monday night with me for a little bit, just chatting and hanging out and listening to me ramble. But I will see you guys around. Thanks again. You guys are the best, and I'll talk to you guys later.